Midnight, just outside Jerusalem. The olive trees in Gethsemane cast heavy shadows as a column of armed guards moves quietly through the brush. In the darkness, the soldiers need a way to ID their target without sparking a riot. They rely on an intimate signal. A trusted friend steps forward, embraces the man they want, and kisses him on the cheek. The man stepping back into the shadows is Judas Iscariot. The man he just handed over to the guards is Jesus of Nazareth. This single, isolated motion triggers the trial and execution that would eventually define a global religion. A standard, everyday greeting, a sign of deep affection, is weaponized, becoming the hallmark of a calculated, premeditated betrayal. To understand how a breach this severe happens, we have to look at his position. Judas was one of the hand-picked 12 apostles, operating at the very center of the inner circle. The historical texts document his specific role in the group. He was their treasurer. He held the money bag. Managing the survival logistics of a nomadic movement requires an absolute, unquestioned level of trust from the top down. So why break that trust? Scholars hypothesize Judas was aligned with the Zealots, a political faction desperate for a violent overthrow of the Roman occupation. When Jesus repeatedly rejected military rebellion, that hope for a revolution shattered. Beyond any accusations of petty financial theft, his actions point toward a deeper internal fracture, an ideological break from a leader who refused to lead the violent revolt Judas expected. Across the city, the religious elite known as the Sanhedrin are dealing with a political crisis. They view Jesus as a dangerous populace stoking insurrection. Arresting him in broad daylight risks sparking the exact public riot they are trying to avoid. Their solution requires a quiet, nighttime extraction. And to pull that off, they need an inside man who knows the target's private schedule. This diagram shows the math. Judas demands 30 pieces of silver, the historical market price for a common slave. But that number carries heavy theological weight. The ancient text of Zechariah lists 30 pieces of silver as the exact price paid to a shepherd. By agreeing to this specific amount, the men in that room reduce a widely followed spiritual leader to a line item on a ledger. The paperwork is done. The contract for a political assassination is live. The tension finally snaps in a crowded candlelit room during the Passover meal. The entire inner circle is packed tightly together, eating in close quarters. Before anyone makes a move, Jesus drops a bombshell. He looks at his closest friends and announces that one of them, sitting at the table, will betray him. Immediate panic ripples through the room. The disciples start desperately asking, "Is it I, Lord?" Judas, caught in the open, feigns innocence and asks the exact same question. Jesus looks at him and quietly replies, "You have said so." The Gospel of John notes that at this precise moment, Satan enters into Judas. The internal clock has run out. He stands up, leaves the table, and walks out into the night. What was once a conspiracy negotiated in a back room is now totally exposed. The collision is unavoidable. We jump right back to midnight. Under the thick canopy of these ancient olive trees, Judas arrives, leading a detachment of armed temple guards directly to the group's private location. He steps forward to fulfill the contract. He delivers the promised kiss. Jesus doesn't fight back or act surprised. He simply asks, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" Chaos erupts instantly. Peter draws a sword and violently slashes at a guard, but Jesus immediately shuts it down, ordering his men to stand down and accept the arrest. If Judas was secretly hoping this confrontation would force Jesus to launch a full-scale military uprising, that hope dies right here. The peaceful surrender seals the finality of the treason. The reality of what he has actually done sets in almost immediately. Any political satisfaction or financial relief vanishes, replaced entirely by crushing, suffocating guilt. He panics and tries to undo the deal. He rushes back to the chief priests, begs them to reverse the transaction, and hurls the 30 pieces of silver across the temple floor. They coldly dismiss him. The timeline ends in total isolation. Rejected by his former brothers, completely discarded by his political co-conspirators, Judas walks away and takes his own life. The entire conspiracy collapses in on itself. The architect of the plot gains zero leverage, wealth, or political power, dying as the tragic victim of his own design. For thousands of years, theologians have debated his exact psychological state. Was he operating out of pure, calculated malice, or was he an unwitting, tragic instrument required to execute a preordained divine blueprint? While the debate over his soul continues, his choice remains the historical mechanism that led to the crucifixion, establishing the foundational event of the Christian narrative of forgiveness.